Okay, it's 7 o'clock sharp. I think I'm going to start just to keep things moving. Hi, everybody. And we're going to be educated tonight about what the Pennsylvania Game Commission is doing to help cavity nesting birds, specifically the chimney swifts and help me out, purple martin, was it?
Purple Martins, yes.
Yeah, great. Okay. Stefan lives in Harrisburg, and that's why we're just meeting virtually here. He is currently, well, he probably long term will be living in a house that he is turning cropland into a meadow. I know a lot of our members are interested in that sort of thing. He grew up in South Central Pennsylvania, where he caught the birding bug as a young teenager. And yes, he has been to Presque Isle. You could tell the picture that he's got there, that was at the Purple Martin Roost at the neck of the peninsula. He went to Ithaca College as an undergraduate and then to SUNY in Syracuse for a master's in conservation biology. And during his younger years, he was a field technician studying golden wing warblers in southern New York and the seaside sparrow on Long Island. After graduate school, Stefan returned to central Pennsylvania as a pheasants forever biologist, working with local farmers to create wildlife habitat on private lands, mainly converting cropland to grassland, kind of sort of what you're doing at your house. Maybe if you had some extra time, you could tell us about that too. That sounds really interesting. But in 2022, he took a position with the Game Commission as the avian recovery biologist, working on statewide initiatives to recover Pennsylvania's declining bird species. He enjoys birding, of course, hiking, camping, and planting wildflower meadows in his local area, including his backyard. So, welcome, Stefan. And we're asking people if you have questions, you can put them in the chat, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll go over them. And let me just check, there's something here. Okay. Julie says, make sure that I get your full address so she can send you the check that we give to our presenters. Yeah, so we'll do that. In fact, I think the information you sent on to us, we already have that, but I'll double check before you go. Okay,
Sure.
take it away, Stefan.
Sure, yeah. Thank you, Sue. Um, this is probably the most relevant group to be showcasing this first photo on the screen here, because this is, as Sue said, this is the Purple Martin roosting colony, probably around August timeframe at Presque Isle. And this was taken by one of our biologists right around evening time as they were coming into roost. So purple martins are one of the species that we're focusing on for this program, but they're not the only species. We actually are doing some work with chimney swifts, and I guess I forgot to mention prothonotary warblers as well, which is also relevant to the northwest part of Pennsylvania because that's one of the few places you can still find them in the state. So I'm going to kind of start from 10,000 feet, and we'll get into more detail with the program specifically, but I wanted to just start with, let me see, is this going to go through here? Hold on me. Oh, there we go. Okay. So cavity nesting species. We're probably all familiar with many of these. We've got about 30 to 35 in Pennsylvania that I would consider priority cavity nesters. And some of them are making holes on their own into dead snags in trees. Woodpeckers are doing that, white-breasted nuthatches as well. Others, like black-capped chickadees, screech owls, and the beautiful wood duck, are also using cavities, but they are not building them themselves. They're using the cavities made by woodpeckers, or they're just finding a bowl in a tree that formed naturally, or a top of a tree snaps off, and they use an area inside the snapped off portion. So, but again, all of these species need cavities in order to nest. But sometimes it can be hard to find a good place to nest when you're relying on a cavity. You can have interspecies competition for these natural sites. Sometimes they're at a premium. There's just not enough cavities within a given territory to support all the bird life that wants to be there. And so humans have come up with creative ideas and ways to supplement these natural cavities. And one of those ways is the bluebird box, or this style of bluebird box, which started with bluebirds. As many of you know, bluebirds were at once in pretty serious decline back in the 50s and 60s. And then the Audubon Society came up with this pretty standard bluebird box design. And now you see almost a pair of bluebirds in every yard that's got patches of green grass. And oftentimes they're using these bluebird boxes. Now, that style has been spread across other species. It's been slightly altered. It's been made bigger for a bird like the kestrel here in the bottom left that will readily accept nest boxes. Tree swallows will use the exact same box as a bluebird. And wood ducks will also use bluebird style box, again, much larger. But when it's placed in a wetland area or marshland, it can be an excellent nesting location for wood ducks. But this style of box doesn't work for every cavity nesting species. And in particular, looking at chimney swifts and purple martins and prothonotary warblers, their needs are a little bit more specific, and the design of the box has to be quite different. So, these are the three. This is sort of a sneak peek into what we're putting out there, but these are the three designs for each species that we are providing as part of this program. And you might be able to guess which species goes with which box, but just to fill you in, if you're not familiar, the ones in the upper left, those are the gourd systems that purple martins like. The one on the right there, that is a chimney swift tower made to look like a chimney. And then in the center is a prothonotary warbler box. It's a PVC tube with a cedar roof, and it's painted to look like actually like a birch tree. So the first bird that we have been working with is the purple martin. Purple martins are our largest swallow species here in Pennsylvania. They're a colonial nester. They're a very social bird. They like being around other individuals of their species. And they also really like being around people. And it really started with the Native Americans. They started convincing purple martins to use natural gourds that they grew in their gardens and put on trees. And they started using those, and they put them in groups, and the purple martins really accepted them. And it was sort of this symbiotic relationship because the purple martins were there as sort of a warning sign almost when somebody was coming into a village. They're also great for insect control around people. And obviously, the purple martins get the benefit of a place to build a nest. We've come quite a long way since then, and now these birds are using almost exclusively these man-made structures, the very popular white prefabricated plastic gourds that are on the top of a rack, or you'll also see the kind of hotel style box that's got multiple holes on the top of a pole. Purple martins, on that topic of exclusively using man-made structures, east of the Mississippi, as far as we know, they only use man-made structures. There are still some subspecies in the Pacific Northwest as well as in the Southwest where they use cacti that will still nest in natural cavities. They're they're an aerial insectivore, so they're spending all their time flying around, hawking insects, and really the only time they come to land is when they're back at their colony. They're a neotropical migrant, so they're going to fly all the way down to the Amazon rainforest, and that's where they winter. And then they return here to Pennsylvania. We have them just for a few short months from usually about the end of April until end of August, maybe early September, and then they're gone again. Chimney swifts they kind of look like one of our swallows, but they're not at all related. They are known as the cigar with wings because they've got this sort of bullet-shaped body with these shaped wings coming off. Can move very quickly through the sky. They are also an aerial insectivore, and to an even lesser extent, they perch really only on the inside walls of their nesting location, which is normally a chimney. Some sort of brick and mortar or stone and mortar chimney is what they've historically used. Obviously, before colonization, they were using natural cavities, hollowed out logs, or I should say, dead standing trees with hollows in them. But again, they really adapted to these man-made chimneys, brick and mortar, that were really popular. And they use small little sticks, and this picture on the right shows it really well. Tiny little sticks that they'll actually pluck on the wing from trees as they're flying, and they'll bring them into their chimney, and they'll use their own saliva to adhere these sticks together into this sort of half cup shape, and that's where they lay their eggs. And I just learned this recently, is that when they lay their eggs, they hatch. They have 4 to 5 nestlings, and as those nestlings grow, they can get really crowded on that little platform, and so they will actually continue to build out their nest as their nestlings grow to help support the size of the birds on the nest. So they're also going to be they're a neotropical migrant. They also winter down in Central and South America, and they get back around the same time as purple martins, maybe a little bit later in Pennsylvania, and they'll stick around usually through till about the end of September, early October. And then finally, we're doing some work with prothonotary warblers. Prothonotary warblers I think prothonotary is an appropriate term, but it's much easier to remember them as the golden swamp warbler, because that golden color, they are a bright bird in an otherwise very dark environment. They love forested swamps. They are almost exclusively found in those areas, and that's why we're kind of on the northern edge of their range. You can find them in this lower Susquehanna River watersheds, as well as the Pennsylvania's northwest, like the big swamps around Hartstown Marsh, Conneaut Marsh. They are not fully dependent or nearly as dependent on man-made nesting boxes as chimney swifts and purple martins, but they do also readily accept them. And again, natural cavities can be at a premium, and so these nesting structures do provide an additional location for them to nest. So prothonotary warblers, again, this is a range map. This is provided by eBird, but you can see we're really at the very northern edge of their range. They're primarily found along the Atlantic coast and the Mississippi River Valley. We do have some along the lower Susquehanna River, a few along the Delaware, and then a few spots in the northwestern part of the state. So purple martins have a much wider range, and we have more of them in Pennsylvania than prothonotary warblers for sure. This map is showing a few things. One, it's a range map, so any place you see a dot, regardless of color, there are purple martins there. But the colors also help tell a story of population dynamics, increases or decreases in population over a 10-year span from 2012 to 2022. And if you see a red dot, that means the population in that dot is declining. If it's blue, it's increasing, and if it's white, it's not really changing over that period of time. And if it's a big dot, it means there's more birds there that are impacted by that decline. Or I should say impacted by that change. So if, for example, in Tennessee, there's some big red dots, that means there's a lot of birds there that are disappearing, versus a large blue dot, like in Missouri, Kentucky there. So there's a lot of birds there and the population is increasing. So in Pennsylvania, looking at the eBird data, population seems to be holding fairly steady, at least from that 2012 to 2022 time period. But when we look at the breeding bird survey data, which was just conducted in Pennsylvania, from 1965 through to about when this eBird data picks up, we can see that the population, if you go back far enough, has steadily declined. So we have been losing purple martins over the long period of time. So there's room for improvement for sure. And chimney swifts show, at least population wide, show a little scarier story when you look at that 10-year window from the eBird data. Most of the places where chimney swifts breed, the numbers seem to be declining, with really the stronghold being the Appalachian spine from Tennessee, North Carolina, up through New York. In Pennsylvania, again, we seem to be holding our numbers fairly steady. But again, we look at the breeding bird survey data for Pennsylvania going back to the 60s, and there's a general decline, slow but steady decline since the 1960s. So what's going on? Why are our aerial insectivores in particular declining? Many of you are probably familiar with the paper from Cornell that came out about 7 years ago now. And the estimate was that we've lost about 160 million aerial insectivores, which includes chimney swifts and purple martins, since the 1970s. So that's for the reference. They show that 2 out of every 5 barn swallows have been lost since 1970. But as it pertains again to swifts and martins, there's a number of different factors that are probably at play, and some of them are out of our control here in Pennsylvania. We don't really know what's happening on their wintering range, and even if we did, it's hard for us to make that impact. But what we can impact here in PA is the issue of nesting habitat deterioration, and speaking specifically about these nesting structures. For purple martins, again, they are 100% reliant on these gourds or these hotel structures on tops of poles, and a colony can blink out in a single year if a landlord who's maintaining that colony, cleaning them out every year, if that individual passes away or they sell their property and the new buyers don't want to maintain a colony, they take them down and they don't put them out the following spring, those birds come back and there's nothing for them to return to. Or you see boxes that just deteriorate over time and the upkeep isn't there. And so again, those colonies can really disappear pretty quickly. And the same can be said for chimney swifts because of their reliance on man-made structures, chimneys. Oftentimes these chimneys get capped. And so a nesting pair that has returned year after year to the same chimney can come back the following year and there's a cap on their chimney and now they can't access it at all. And certainly modern homes that don't have these brick and mortar chimneys, they just have a small tube that comes up. That's not accessible to the swifts at all. So there's definitely a decline of nesting availability on the landscape here in PA. So the Game Commission, we decided to address that issue, and we started this cavity nesting program, which has been an awesome opportunity for us to not only improve conservation efforts for these species, but to also increase our public engagement with a demographic that we really don't get to touch very often. Oftentimes our best efforts are on state game lands, which are typically in very rural areas, and we don't have a lot of impact in some of the more populated parts of the state. Certainly not in areas like you see here. This is a public park where we've got ball fields and outhouses, or not houses, bathrooms, and very well manicured lawns. That's not a place where we expect to see conservation efforts done by the Pennsylvania Game Commission, but it's exactly where chimney swifts and purple martins want to be. And so we've been working really closely with a number of different partners statewide, lots of different townships and municipalities to install these nesting structures in public spaces for these birds. And not just the structures, we've been providing educational signage to go along with them too, because again, people are going to walk through parks and they're going to see these structures wondering what they are. And so it's not only as important to, again, have the structure there for the birds, but to have the educational aspect there with the signage for people to understand what's going on and what they can do. And these are just some photos of places where we and ultimately did install structures. This is at a it was an old schoolhouse turned into a municipal building, and there's a park right behind this photo, so people were walking by could see our tower. This was a historic home in Morrisville, Pennsylvania, which is along the Delaware River, and actually, it's very close to Washington's crossing, where Washington famously crossed the Delaware. And prior to him crossing the Delaware, he stayed in this house. So this is a historic site, small little pocket park in the town of Morrisville, and we were able to put a chimney swift tower up there. So the project objectives that we set out at the beginning of this program, which really started in 2025, just over a year ago, our goal was to install 35 chimney swift towers, 25 purple martin colonies, and 100 prothonotary warbler boxes statewide. We wanted to educate the public with signage at each structure, recruit volunteers to monitor and clean the structures, and then also encourage protection of historic chimney swift roosts. And so, in my mind, the thought was, well, okay, we're going to probably we'll get some prothonotary warbler boxes out in the northwest part of the state and then along the Susquehanna River. And then purple martins will kind of be statewide, but we're going to focus on the Ridge and Valley farmlands, have some in the Pacific, I keep saying the Pacific Northwest PA, but we probably won't have too many across the northern tier because we don't really have purple martins there. It's too forested for them. But chimney swifts can be found almost anywhere across the state as long as there's available nesting habitat or a small town with some older chimneys. And after now a year, and this is our second season, we've done pretty well with the prothonotary boxes that we've put out, and we've distributed them in the places we thought, plus a few places. We have quite a few out in the Northwest, at Shenango Reservoir. We have several. We have them at a couple of game lands, just near Meadville. And I guess I should say that each of these symbols for the prothonotary warbler it's not just one box. Each symbol represents anywhere from like 3 to 5 boxes that have been put out. And we do have a couple places along Susquehanna and several near the Delaware River as well. And I will say, too, that when you see the highlighted symbols, that represents structures that were installed through Birdtown, PA. Birdtown, PA, you might be familiar with it. It's a certification program where local municipalities can receive it's a bird-friendly certification saying we're doing good work, good habitat work, good outreach within our community on bird conservation. And so we've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of these bird towns in order to get these structures out, and mainly that's a group of volunteers. So I wanted to give a specific shout out to them because they've been really great in helping expand this program statewide. So our purple martin structures, they've gone out primarily in the southeast, and a large part of that is because most of the bird towns have been in southeastern Pennsylvania, but we have a nice gathering in south central PA, a few out towards the Pittsburgh area, and we don't have any in the Northwest yet. And I think that's in part because Purple Martin Conservation Association, who we're actually working very closely with to fund a grad student to do some research, which I'll talk about here at the end. They have a really good Purple Martin community in the Northwest. So anyone who wants a Purple Martin structure has known about it for a while in Northwestern PA through them. So, but that's not to say that we are not open to putting some structures up there as well. And then chimney swifts, again, we have a pretty nice distribution across the southern tier of the state. We haven't quite made many inroads yet in the northern tier, but I think that's only a matter of time. So it's been, and I will say in a matter of two seasons now, we went from last summer we had, I think, 14 Purple Martin structures out. Now we've got 45. At the end of last season, we had one chimney swift tower. Now we've got close to 30. and we've got about 75 Prothonotary warbler boxes out. So we're very close to, if not hit our goals for these species, and the interest keeps growing. So we're it's keeping me quite busy, which is a good thing. And so this is kind of again, a shout out to the Birdtown, PA, but we've got structures installed at 82 locations statewide, and of those, 52 of those locations were completed through the Birdtown partnership. So these are the bird towns that we've been able to work with so far. It's great because they usually most townships have a environmental action committee, advocacy committee, that's the word. And those folks usually are volunteers. Some of them might be paid through a township, but they work closely with the township, and oftentimes the township has to approve of the installations of a lot of these structures because they have to be on public property, but can also help with the installation itself. So it really has been a good partnership. And so this is what our Purple Martin structure looks like. It's an 8 gourd structure. They do come with, you can get them with fewer gourds, you can get them with more gourds, but we figured 8 was kind of a good middle of the road number to start with when you were trying to start a brand new colony. And this is just a number of our volunteers that have been installing them at the different parks across the state. And these are our chimney swift towers. I guess I'll explain a little bit about the process of how this all works. So for either structure, what normally happens is when a township comes to me, they send me an email or call me and say, hey, we're interested in this program. I will come out with and do a site visit with them to look at a bunch of different parks in their area to identify a good location for either a chimney swift tower or a purple martin colony, and use that opportunity to tell them a little bit more about the program. And once we find a good site, then what I will do is I will come out at a later date with the structure. If it's the purple martin structure, I can usually build that in-house in Harrisburg before I even leave to come to the field for the second visit, and I'll just drop that off with the volunteers. If it's the chimney swift tower, I will bring out the 4 panels and the angled steel legs that are used to create this box, and I'll actually build it on site. And my part of it is I build the tower kind of horizontally. I build it on the ground, and then it's the responsibility of the partner to erect it into a footer, which then, once it's in place inside this it's a 2 foot deep and 4 foot by 4 foot square hole. Once it's in place inside that hole, then concrete gets poured in around it. It's probably a little overkill with the concrete, but it's also a kind of a CYA thing to make sure that it doesn't move, because there is a lot of surface area that reaches up about 13 feet into the sky. And so if you have some heavy winds, and again, these structures, we try to put them in an open space. We really don't want it moving or going anywhere. So we make sure that there's enough concrete there to keep it steady. And then I'll usually come back a third time with the signage. We've been able to provide some really nice signage. It's like a 2 foot by 3 foot, UV resistant, weatherproof, graffiti resistant signage, comes on a post, and that information on there, again, just helps provide the public with some educational information about the species and what these structures are. And then Prothonotary warblers, we haven't been putting as many of those out on township properties, and that's really for one reason. It's most townships don't have the habitat or are not within the breeding range of Prothonotaries in Pennsylvania. You really do have to be in those localized areas, the lower Delaware, lower Susquehanna, or the Northwest. And within those regions have to have that swamp forest habitat, kind of slow moving or nearly stagnant water, because that's where these birds like to nest. But those structures, obviously, they're very simple to install, and it's actually a really nice PVC tube that easily detaches from this cedar roof, and then it just comes on a conduit pole that can be sunk into wet, swampy area really easily, and can be left out there all year. Uh, our first year, we, not only did we get structures out there and, obviously great educational opportunity for anyone walking past, but, we wanted to see some success with the birds. And our purple martin structures, I think I said we had about 15 out the first year. We had purple martins at 7 of our colonies. 6 of those colonies ended up having nesting birds. And these are some photos. This is the photo on the left was our most successful site. So this was amazing. With first year we put this structure out there, and it was found by 8 pairs of purple martins. I will say that's an anomaly. That typically doesn't happen right away. It can be hard to get these birds to come to a structure. They have to find it. This structure was located down in Chester County, which is probably the most densely populated martin population in the state. So it's not too surprising that it was found, but it was, again, great to see that it filled up right away. And then this is a picture of some nestlings. And this picture is also really great to see if you are a purple martin landlord or you do plan to have a colony at some point, because there's some telltale signs in here that these are purple martins and not tree swallows or house sparrows. For one, the nest itself is kind of a very shallow bowl, so you wouldn't see that if it was a house sparrow. But also the green leaves. So purple martins are notorious for pulling in fresh green leaves as the final lining inside their nest. And that's very unique to them. Tree swallows don't do that. Bluebirds don't do that. So it's neat to see that when you open up the side of one of these plastic gourds, they have a portal on the side you can easily look in, and also used for cleanouts. So these are some of our numbers from last summer. I don't have numbers yet from this year for our colonies that are out there, but I will say that all of the structures that you see here, I know we had martins returning to this year. So we did pretty well with purple martins last year, and on about 40 to 50% of our structures. Prothonotary warblers, we got quite a few nesting pairs, and I would surmise we probably had over 30 nestlings fledge from our structures. The chimney swift towers last year, we only had one out there, and it was not occupied, so that's why I don't have any chimney swift results from last year. And again, I don't know what the results are looking like this year for chimney swifts, but hopefully we do get a few. I will say chimney swifts are our most difficult species to attract with these towers, because they have a very strong condition of returning to the exact same place every year. It is somewhat difficult to pull them to a new colony, or shouldn't say new colony, a new structure for a nesting pair. But we should have some results by the end of the summer. So lessons from year one, that there's some trial and error with this whole process. I mean, overall, it's been a great experience. But we did realize that there are some things to let partners know as they take on the responsibilities of installing and maintaining and monitoring. One is the Swift Tower. So when that has to be uprighted into this hole, it's about a 300-pound structure. So it takes more than just you can't just lift it up and flip it in. The easiest thing is to have a backhoe, access to tie straps around it and hoist it up, and then kind of shimmy it into the hole. But I have had some very intrepid volunteers just use manpower. They lift it up and they actually hoist it, kind of leverage it up with the truck of a pickup truck, or the bed of a pickup truck, and start to kind of push it up into the hole, and have a couple of people on the other side to make sure it doesn't fall past the hole and go out the other side. And then I should mention that these structures and the educational signage is free to the partner. We provide those. We eat the cost for those. Um, but any installation costs are the responsibility of the partner. So for the purple martin colonies, there's really no cost. It's a bag of Quikrete in order to install that structure. But the Swift Tower, because there is a lot of concrete, that can cost you anywhere from $300 to $1,000 if you were to use a professional. A lot of times the townships will be able to get it done for free. They probably have another concrete pour going on. It's about a yard of concrete, so to them it's not that much. And so that they can work a deal with the contractor and say, hey, after you're done with this job pouring a sidewalk, can you just use your leftover concrete to pour this footer for this tower? And it doesn't really cost them anything extra. So again, that's why it's good. It's great to have a relationship with a township or municipality, especially for the chimney swift tower. Another thing that I like to say is that the accompanying signage will typically be delayed. We contract that out to a third party, and I don't typically get those signs made until I'm sure that the structures are going to be installed. So usually there's like a 2 to 3 month delay between when a structure is out there and when the signage comes along. And finally, for all of our partners, we provide a nest check sheet for whatever species they are monitoring, and that's just more for us. That sheet it has some basic information that we're requesting during the nesting season to let us know if the structure is being used, what's using it, how many pairs are using it, and that information just gets sent back to us at the end of each season, so we know how successful we're being. And then finally, I wanted to mention, this is sort of a tangent from our cavity nesting structure program, but we're also working with a grad student right now at the University of Delaware, Will Crone, who's investigating natal dispersal of purple martins and their use of artificial colonies. As I said, purple martins, they are only using these man-made structures, but it can be hard to attract martins to a new colony. And so what he's really trying to get at is what on the landscape, what factors are playing a role in attracting those birds, like looking at presence of water or distance that a colony structure is to a tree line. And he's particularly interested in second year birds. So when martins are born, they fledge from the nest. They're considered juveniles at that point, and they will fly down to South America for their first winter. They return back in the spring. So this is really their second year of life, and so they're considered second year birds. And oftentimes they try to return to their natal colony or the colony where they were born. But they usually return to those colonies after the adults. So the adults get back first. They tend to fill up all the vacancies. And then when these second year birds return, there's no place for them to fill in a nest. So those are typically the individuals that are forced to disperse outward and find new colonies and start new colonies. So oftentimes those are the birds that are showing up at our new structures first. And Will has been banding juveniles by the hundreds in hopes of resiting them at colonies in his search areas the following year. So these birds are banded, they fly all the way to South America, they fly all the way back, and he's trying to find them again. So he's been putting a lot of miles on his car. I'll show you this here. These are his search areas. The colored diamonds. Well, first of all, you can probably see from the inset photo, but he's got a search area up in Erie. He has a search area in the Allentown, Pennsylvania area, and then a search area kind of Chester County, northern Delaware, outside of Philadelphia. The diamonds represent locations where he's banding juvenile birds, and the black dots, as well as the diamonds, but primarily the black dots, are the known colonies in that search area, and he's driving to each of those colonies not every day, but as often as he can get to them throughout the summer, to relocate banded birds that he had banded at those larger colonies where the diamonds are located. And now it's not, and I will say, you're probably like, man, how can one person get to all these places? Well, they can't. So he has a few technicians that are helping him out in the southeast part of the state for the Allentown and the Chester County search areas. And then I mentioned Purple Martin Conservation Association. They have hired a couple of technicians to go out and basically do what Will's doing in the northwest part of the state, because Will obviously can't be in two places or three places at once. So we're really interested in the outcome of this research because the implications are if we can identify how far young birds are flying to find new colonies or to establish new colonies, as well as understand what factors at those colonies are leading to their success, then we can better place new colonies as we continue this program forward. If we learn that, the maximum dispersal distance of young birds is 20 miles, then we know that we don't want to be putting new structures up in remote areas where there's no nesting colony within 20 miles, because the likelihood that it's going to be found is pretty low. And so, we don't really know what that dispersal distance is, and that's really what Will's going to be able to reveal to us, we hope, in the next year or so. So, yeah, there's some really interesting stuff going on with Purple Martin dispersal, better understanding what their needs are. And yeah, we're looking forward to learning more about that. But in the meantime, we're trying our hardest to do what we can for all these birds, to increase conservation efforts and really the increase education too, because that's a really big part. We know that these structures alone are not going to turn the populations around for those species that are declining. It's the education that's going to help teach people about what they can do. That's really going to make the difference. So I will leave you with this slide. My information is on here. The best way to reach out to me is probably via email. But we do have some structures still available through June 2027. That's when we have to have all of our funding spent by. And I will say that it has to be on public land. These structures are not available for like a private landowner to use. So that's the one caveat. But yeah, so I guess at this point, I'm happy to take any questions. I haven't checked the chat, but yeah, thank you again. This is great.
Okay, well, thanks. Everybody, if you'd like to, you can unmute yourself and put your video on. We do have a couple questions, but I think you answered one of them. Where is it? Come on. Yeah, this is not my day here. Okay, I'm clicking on chat. Oh, there it is. Okay. And the first one was, are any of the purple martin or swift structures on private property? But you just said now they have to be on public property.
Yes.
Yeah. And are the signs accessible? I think, Freda, you might have been referring to the chimney swift tower signs.
I'm referring to whether a person who's visually impaired could read them.
Yeah. Sorry, vision impaired. Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
yeah.
I mean, I guess there's no braille on them, and there's no audio at this point. At this time, we don't have an audio like QR code, but that is something that we should probably consider.
You really should, since you are a public agency and you should be making it accessible.
Yes, duly noted. Thank you. I'll talk about. We actually, it's probably a good time to make these changes too, because we are going through a rebranding process right now. So we are rebranding our signs. Like we need to make edits. We can't put any more signs out until we make edits. So that could be part of our editing process.
Yeah, Freda actually sits on Erie, the city of Erie's Environmental Advisory Council. You had mentioned them earlier, and mostly in Southeast Pennsylvania. That's where you will find these EACs. So we're happy that Erie established one a few years ago. So, I have a few questions. Did you talk with Jamie Hill about the Prothonotary warbler houses on Presque Isle State Park at all? I believe, and someone in the audience can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he put up a whole bunch of them along the neck of the peninsula, and then they were in it, the trees they were on were inadvertently cut down last year. Am I right? Okay, Julie's saying,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're correct. And a lot of those houses he moved along the edge of Long Pond, and I don't know how successful they have been. Um, but yeah, they were very upset when those trees were cut along the entrance to the park because I had seen Prothonotarians nesting there. So whether they've been successful on Long Pond, I have no idea.
Hmm.
But yeah, Jamie was is involved in that.
Yeah. And Jamie, you probably know he's a fellow who started, or yeah, I believe he started the Purple Martin Conservation Association, him or his father, I forget.
He did. He
Okay.
started it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Huh. Well,
Yes, yeah, that did happen. I did hear about that, and then cutting the trees down. It just daylighted everything, so that really discouraged the prothonotarians in that area.
yeah. Huh. Um, I wonder how we would find out how they did this year. I suppose we would approach Jamie Hill. He'd be the person to ask then. I'll have to make a note
Yes,
about that.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. So I'm curious, did you ever approach anybody at Presque Isle State Park about putting a chimney swift tower there?
I have not. No. I mean, I've been kept very busy by this that I haven't had to solicit anybody yet. It's
Oh,
just been people been coming to me. We have state parks. We have one in Benjamin Rush State Park in Philadelphia, another one at Shawnee State Park. Um, I don't, but no, we don't have one up at Presque Isle yet. And that's I'm happy to put them up at state parks. We have to go through a whole branding thing with state parks too, because putting signage up on state parks, they have DCNR has their own look, but we can get it done. Um, so if Presque Isle is interested, and yeah, I'd be happy to talk to them.
okay. Um, here's Here's a note from Thomas Frank. He says the Long Pond prothonotary boxes are visible along the sidewalk trail at Presque Isle State Park. Haven't heard of any success from Jamie when I asked recently. And then he has a link to his most recent update if anybody's interested. Thank you, Thomas. That's helpful. Huh. Julie mentions that she has a purple martin colony here. And what color is the band that this study is using, that a graduate student is banding with? And if I see one, who should I report it to?
Sure. Well, so the color bands actually, I believe they correspond to the colors of the diamonds here. So if you're up in the Erie area and you have a colony and you see a band that's one of those colors shown by the diamonds, um, that's a bird, that's one of Will's birds. Um, and I think someone did mention that maybe not. But if you do find I think I saw another comment that if you find a banded bird, what should we do? Yes, you should definitely report it, um, because then the technicians can come out and identify the individual. Uh, the best way to reach person to reach out to would probably be Will, or actually for you guys it might be PMCA.
Okay. All
Um,
right. That makes sense.
if you can send a message to somebody at PMCA and they'll know.
Okay. I see your hand here, Fred. Hold on for, yeah, okay. I think you answered this question too. Carolyn said, would you like to have Erie area birders watch for and report sightings? Okay, then report them to the Purple Martin Conservation Association. Um, keep going down here. Okay, Carolyn commented that Jamie is attempting to monitor and record all purple martin colonies in Erie County. Wow, for the PA Bird Atlas 3. Also, he's looking for eagle and osprey nests. I knew he was monitoring osprey nests, but I didn't know about the eagles. Huh. Okay, all right, let me get to Freda. Um,
So I didn't write it. Can I just speak?
yeah, go right ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
yep.
my understanding was when the EMI was torn down that there had been some I think it was swift as opposed to bad activity there,
Yep.
and we're working with them. There are also some, I believe, uncapped chimneys down, Novo Aurora and Angelo's Roofing, and I wondered if anybody knows if those are being used.
I don't. Regarding EMI, that's for people who aren't familiar, that's an old manufacturing site on West 12th Street that's being rehabbed, and their chimney swifts used to roost up there. And
Mm.
several years ago, Julie Dell and I were all eager about getting a chimney swift tower put up on Presque Isle State Park, and then it sort of fell through, which I was glad because it turns out it's really a lot of work, like you had mentioned in your presentation. Now, Mary Birdsong had approached me a couple months ago about that chimney swift tower going up possibly on EMI's roof. And I told her it's kind of out of my, I just don't have the energy to and time to do that anymore. But I gave her some information how she could apply for some funding to help put one of them up on the roof. And I haven't heard back from her because that is, oh my gosh, quite a process. Yeah. And
So
I have not heard anything. Go
it's
ahead.
going to be the headquarters for Fish USA, and I wonder if Dan Pastor might want to have that where his headquarters is going to be.
Yeah.
The other question I had is I have a friend who lives in McCain Township, but really kind of midway between Erie, between the mall area and McCain, and she's doing a lot of native planting, and she's got woods and she's got an open field. I know there's the other model where people could build their own Swift towers. You had a presentation about that a couple of years ago, but um, she wondered how to figure out if Swifts would come there, and or yeah, how do you figure out if they would come to where you are now?
So it can take, even if you have a great location, and it sounds like your friend's location, if out in an open field is a reasonable spot, it can take several years for them to find a chimney or a tower. Chimney swifts, they still do nest in natural cavities. So, with purple martins, you typically want to focus in agricultural areas, avoiding the northern tier of the state because we just don't have them in forested areas. But chimney swifts they are statewide. And so, I would say if you have the local habitat requirements or that open landscape, anyone statewide could put up a chimney swift tower. Obviously, there's a lot of labor and some finances that need to go into that. But then it's also a waiting game because they could find it a year later or 7 years later or never. And that's something that I do try to let our folks know about, is that there's no guarantees with any of this. Obviously, we try to put them up in the best locations possible to track the birds, but and you never know unless you try. You're never going to get birds unless you put something up. But yeah, there's never a guarantee.
Hmm. Yeah, when Presque Isle Audubon looked into doing this, again, it was probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I spoke at length with someone from the Audubon Society of Western Pennsylvania down in Pittsburgh, and they had just put up a whole bunch of chimney swift towers. And she was mentioning they were kind of disappointed. I think it was maybe the first year that they had done that construction, I talked to her, and maybe one or two out of 100, some immense amount that were put up in the Pittsburgh area, and very,
Mhm.
very few were being occupied. But again, that was quite a number of years ago, so hopefully
Well,
they're
and
better.
I can update you on that. So I've talked with Brian Schema, who's works with the Western Pennsylvania Audubon, and is kind of spearheading the chimney swift effort and is in control of those towers. They're at about 60% occupancy in their towers now.
But
So
Wow.
it took a number of years, but the Swifts eventually found them, and they
good.
come back every year now. So to the point now where he did a study similar to what Will's doing with purple martins, but looking at landscape level factors that determines why some towers get used every year and other ones don't. You know, looking at distance to historical homes, distance to tree lines, distance to water, all sorts of factors. And he's planning to publish it, I think, later this year. So, but again, that's only possible because they've achieved a fairly high occupancy rate. So those towers got accepted.
Do you know where that would be published, or what
I
journal
don't.
or whatever? Okay,
I don't know what journal that would eventually be published in.
okay.
Um, yeah, it would. But I do talk to Brian a couple times a year, so I'll pick his brain whenever I see him next.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it'd be through like the Pennsylvania Society for Ornithology or something. Well, okay, we have another question here. With martins, there are attraction tools. Are there any attraction tools that can be used with chimney swifts?
So I've had this question before, and swifts. I know there's European swifts where they will use sort of like a chattering call, similar to martins. It was like an audio lure to bring them in. But those swifts, they're different. They use a different nesting style. They don't nest in a vertical column. And so, as far as I know, nobody has tried using an attractant, or I haven't read of any success using an audio lure to attract swifts to a tower. It's an interesting concept because, again, it seems to work for purple martins. They use it for European swifts. So it could work, but we have not explored that option yet.
Okay. We have a comment here from Carolyn Sturdivant, and she says, looking in eBird for a specific species, it might be possible to see if swifts have been found near a possible new location. If birders in Erie County cover the inland areas, we will learn more about the distribution of swifts. This is a plug for our birders to join the Pennsylvania Bird Atlas in eBird to capture our bird populations for the Atlas data. And yes, Carolyn is the I forget the exact term, Care, but you're heading the Erie County effort. I know that to try to get more people involved with the Pennsylvania Bird Atlas. So, have you had any luck, Carolyn, over the last couple of weeks? We've been doing a lot of outreach. I don't know if you've received any mentions from people who are interested in participating. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, well, I'll keep going. How do I know if the swifts flying over my neighborhood are using my chimney? Ooh.
Good question. So, really easy way to tell is right around sunset, they will suddenly drop into your chimney. So they're hawking insects all day long. They might, if well, once they have nestlings, they'll return at times during the day, but you can't really tell when that's going to happen. But every evening, right around sunset, they will come into the chimney because they're going to spend the night in there. So if you have a vantage point where you can view your chimney, maybe 20 minutes on either side of sunset, just sit there and watch for birds that might fly in, and they'll fly over your chimney really fast, just like they do everywhere else in the sky, and then suddenly they'll just do this, like it's almost bat like. They suddenly flutter their wings just above your chimney. It's like they put the brakes on and they just drop in.
Hmm.
It's really neat if you've never seen it. And I would encourage you to, if you know of, or if you've heard of a spot where they congregate in the uh, late summer, early fall, they form these large roosting colonies. Hundreds or even thousands of birds will use a single chimney, and they do the same thing. They just sort of swirl around the chimney like a tornado, and then they just suck into it. And it usually all happens within a couple of minutes. So you just have all these birds going into the chimney at the same time.
Oh,
It's neat.
This this is Carolyn. I unmuted myself. Thank you for the information about the finding the birds in my chimney. I know they fly over my house. I know that some neighbors have a chimney where the swifts have been nesting. I know that house is going to change hands, and I'm hoping that the chimney will still be available for those swifts. As far as, do I have more people helping with the bird atlasing? I have reached out to some who have signed my list at some of our events saying they want to learn more about the breeding bird atlas. And we have about an hour-long town hall meeting that people can watch. I can send people that link so that they can hear a little bit about it from Amber, who is at Hawk Mountain, and she's the state coordinator.
oh.
And so I'm always wishing that the great birders in Erie will help us put the great birds that we have in Erie County on the database. And we see the birds on eBird, but if they aren't in the Atlas project, they don't count. If they aren't coded, they don't count on the database for the bird atlas. So more to be said, more campaigning to do in a couple more years of this 5-year project. Thank you.
Freda wrote, there's a purple martin structure visible from I-90 East Harbor Creek. You know, is that the one that has the fountain, Freda?
It's the one, I think yes. And there's a sign that says Parment or something or other.
Oh, that's private land, and that's privately put up, that purple martin structure. I know that fella. That's not too far from where I live. You know, I have a question for you. I don't think I misheard you, but you had said that Prothonotera warblers are nest in Conneaut Marsh in our neck of the woods.
Yes. Yeah. So not out in the marsh. But like along the edges where you have some swamp forested areas. Yeah, there's some places where you can pick them up there.
Oh, that'd be a good place for a field trip if we knew exactly where to look. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can go on eBird and find some of those spots too.
Okay. And one last question. You had mentioned, I think funding is set through next year. Do you know if it will possibly continue beyond that, or would that be the end of your efforts?
So I should know within the next couple of months. We submitted a work plan to extend this funding for another 2 years. So that funding would kick in right when this one drops off.
Oh, good.
So if we get the funding, it would go from July. It would go and basically extend us to June of 2029, which would be awesome.
Wonderful.
So I'll let everybody know whether or not that comes through. I've heard so far kind of some rumblings of the people that the committees that make these decisions that it's looking good, but nothing official yet.
Yeah. With the state.
Yeah, I mean our funding is slightly different because we don't get taxpayer dollars, so all of our money is through license sales and leases from oil and gas on our state game lands. And so that money we have full control over, but there's a lot of projects that are ongoing. Game Commission's 900 plus employees, so we only have so much that gets ponied out for research. So it's still fairly competitive funding.
Okay. Well, I wish you the best. Well, did I miss any questions? I think I caught them all. Or does anybody have any other final comments or anything they want to bring up?
Thank you.
Yeah, it was very
I
good.
guess there is a park. It looks just like one of your pictures. It's a ball field park, and it's east of, and when you get off of 90 to go to northeast, and you head east, I think it's Washington Avenue, and it looks like a great spot. I don't know. I guess how does an entity come? Do they come to you, or you seek them out?
So they usually come to me, but someone like yourself, if you have a spot that you think, in a public park that could be a good location, I would encourage you to reach out to the township, um, and talk with someone at Public Works, or if they have an EAC, to see if that's something that they would be interested in, because they would have to be on board for any of these installations.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a lot of work maintaining them, I think. And then you have to do, a little bit of reporting about what you're seeing there too. So yeah, I'm not sure there's a lot of people jumping up ready to do that sort of thing. Hmm.
I will say, I will also make a plug for the Pennsylvania Breeding Bird Atlas. Yes, get involved as for all of you out there who are on the fence. It's definitely a worthwhile cause.
Yeah. Well,
Helps
thanks
us understand
again.
what's happening to our birds in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. It's one of those things I wish I had time to do. I just don't seem to have the time to do it. And I feel badly, but I don't know. That's the way it goes. Yeah. Well, thanks again. This was very informative, and we appreciate your time and effort in putting this together. And it will
Absolutely.
be on YouTube. Generally, I get to post it on YouTube on our YouTube channel within a day or two at the most, and then a lot of people will see it from there. So thanks
Great.
again, and I'm going to end recording here, I think.